Why was no one answering the radio? Pinned against the jagged stone of the valley, Staff Sergeant Mitchell felt the world collapsing into a narrow tunnel of noise. Gunfire ricocheted off the rock walls. Dust fell like snow. 3 of his brothers were bleeding into the earth, their faces pale, breaths shallow. His own cheek stung with stone fragments where a round had struck just inches from his head. "Bravo 6, he gasped into the handset. "We are pinned. Heavy contact, multiple wounded. Cannot break contact. Request immediate support." Static, nothing else. His pulse roared in his ears, drowning the chaos. 20 minutes to extraction, but he knew it in his bones. They wouldn't last 5. Not like this. Not with ammunition nearly gone. This was how it ended. One of America's most elite fighting units, reduced to names that would be read at ceremonies, folded flags handed to families who would never understand why the intelligence had been so wrong. Then something different. Not the desperate chatter of AKs, not the wild, untrained rhythm of militants firing into the night. This was clean, singular, a measured crack that split the dark like thunder. On the ridge above, the fighter with the RPG, a shadow who had been angling for a clear shot, jerked, staggered, and fell. Another crack, another enemy collapsed. A third, then silence broken only by confusion in the enemy ranks. Their neat attack faltered, shouts, disorder, panic. Mitchell blinked, chest heaving, staring into the dark as if it might give him an answer. Then finally, his radio hissed back to life. "Bravo 6, this is Guardian. I count 16 hostiles on your perimeter. I've cleared your northern exit route. Move now while they're scattered." The voice was calm, measured, female. "Who?" he began. Questions later, she cut him off. "Move now." And so they did. None of them ever saw her. None of them ever spoke her name. But they never forgot that voice, the one that had come out of the night like a lifeline. Years later, another night, another briefing, another mission that felt wrong before it even began. Lieutenant Colonel Michael "Iron Mike" stood rigid at the front of the command tent, his weathered face unreadable. Maps covered the tables. The Sierra Nevada mountains, their jagged ridges circled in red. Satellite imagery too neat, too clean. Reports stacked in tidy piles that looked more like a presentation than real intelligence. Didn't trust neat. He didn't trust clean. He had been doing this too long. Clean intel was always the dirtiest of all. "Final approval just came through," Captain David announced, sliding a folder across the table. "Command wants this wrapped up clean and quiet." Didn't touch the folder. His eyes stayed on the map. "There's one addition to your team parameters," continued. His voice was carefully neutral as though rehearsed. "J. Soch is attaching a designated marksman. Special request from upstairs." His jaw tightened. "My team has 2 qualified snipers already. This one comes with a specific skill set, mountain warfare expertise." His gaze sharpened. "Who is it?" "Sergeant, no relation," added quickly, forcing a weak smile. The name lingered in the tent like smoke, finally turned, his face stone. "The woman from Fort Benning." "The same, 3 tour in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, instructor at the Army Sniper School." His voice dropped to something quiet, dangerous. "The last time one of your office women was attached to one of my ops, I carried 3 men home in bags. That was an intelligence failure, not. I don't want her." "This isn't a request." Set the folder down firmly. "She'll be at the briefing at 700. When the captain left, silence returned. Only the hum of generators outside the canvas walls. Stood motionless, then slowly flipped open the folder. Her picture stared back. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled tight into a regulation bun, expression neutral, eyes not neutral at all, eyes that had seen too much too soon. Hawk, graduate of Ranger School, one of the first women to complete the course. Commendations stacked across a decade of deployments, marksman ratings in 9 systems. And one note in her file that made his stomach knot. occasional disregard for chain of command when tactical assessments conflict with orders. Exactly what he didn't need. He snapped the folder shut. Just what he needed least of all, a woman with something to prove. But that wasn't the whole truth, was it? Had heard her name before, in whispers, in stories passed between units where the official reports never matched what men swore they'd lived through. A sniper who had appeared from nowhere, then disappeared just as quickly. A woman who had saved teams that never admitted she was there. Was it myth, morale-building rumor, or something more real, too real for command ever to acknowledge? That was the mystery. And mysteries got men killed. Dawn came too soon. The team gathered in the briefing room, the air heavy with tension, entered quietly, slipping into the back row. Her movements were precise, efficient, nothing wasted. The Mk-13 sniper rifle she carried bore the scars of field use, the stock wrapped in faded tape, the weapon of someone who had worked it hard and trusted it more than words. 6 pairs of eyes tracked her. No one spoke. At the front, continued as though she hadn't entered at all. Satellite imagery shows the training facility here. His finger tapped the map, a red circle deep in the Sierra Valleys. Intelligence suggests 15 to 20 combatants, mixed foreign nationals and American citizens. Weapons training, small unit tactics, consistent with a terror cell. Carlos, the team's scout, raised his hand. Rules of engagement, sir. Observe and report only, replied without hesitation. We locate, confirm, document. Agency teams will handle the takedown. With respect, sir, their medic Doc Henderson spoke up. If they're training terrorists on American soil, why aren't we the ones too? Those are the orders, cut him off. His tone brooked no argument. Jester Williams, their demolitions man, jerked his thumb toward. And what's her role in all this, sir? Finally acknowledged her presence. Sergeant has been attached for overwatch, long-distance reconnaissance. We already have snipers, Jester muttered. Sergeant brings specific expertise, said flatly. The words sounded borrowed, not believed. Remained silent, expression unreadable. She had been here before, an outsider in a brotherhood, the woman no one trusted until she proved herself. She knew better than to waste words. But she also knew something none of them did. Something she hadn't told them, not yet. The Sierra Nevada mountains, crisp air, pine on the wind, thin, biting altitude. The helicopter thudded away into silence, leaving only the distant cry of birds as the team spread out from the landing zone. For hours they moved through the forest, no words, only hand signals, boots silent on damp earth, the mission ahead pressing down heavier than their packs. Kept her distance but not too much, her breathing already adjusted to the thin air, her eyes scanning ridges, shadows, tree lines. She had been here before, not in California but in other mountains, Afghanistan, the Hindu Kush. She knew how to read land like others read books. And something about this land was wrong. She saw it in the bent grass, in the fresh scuffs of stone where boots had slipped, in the brass casing half buried but gleaming too clean, too new. Not signs of amateurs, not terrorists training clumsily in the woods. This was deliberate, professional. A message, perhaps. Or bait. When she reported it, his jaw clenched, his eyes hard. This is consistent with intelligence, he said coldly. We proceed according to plan. Held his gaze. With respect, sir, this isn't Kandahar, but tactical signatures don't change with geography. This is bait. The team shifted uncomfortably, caught in the tension between commander and newcomer. Finally spoke, voice flat with finality. Your concerns are noted, Sergeant. We move at first light. And with that the matter was closed. Turned away, checking her rifle, fingers brushing over the faded scrap of cloth tied to the stock. A gift from a mentor long gone, a reminder of what he had taught her. Become the bullet. Our instincts screamed the truth he refused to hear. This wasn't a training camp. It wasn't reconnaissance. It was something else. And they were walking straight into it. Why did the valley feel alive? The Sierra Nevada mountains were usually filled with the chatter of birds, the rustle of leaves, the unseen orchestra of wilderness. But on the second morning, when SEAL Team 7 Alpha began their descent, everything was wrong. The forest was still, silent. Even the wind held its breath. Felt the weight of it first, the unnatural quiet, the way shadows clung to the undergrowth, the way her every instinct screamed, "We are being watched." Led them down a game trail, boots sinking into damp soil, his movements smooth, practiced. He was their point man, their eyes on the ground. Behind him, walked with the calm assurance of a commander who had seen too many wars to flinch at silence. His rifle ready, his mind still clinging to the plan. Kept to the ridge parallel to them, her scope sweeping ahead. She scanned branches, tree lines, folds of terrain. Every 20 paces, her gut whispered the same word: trap. And then there, 300 meters ahead, something moved. Not wind, not animal, a flicker too controlled, too deliberate. She froze, sight pressed to her scope. The shape dissolved back into the trees, leaving only silence. Her hand went to her radio. "Viper 1, this is Hawk. Possible movement 300 meters bearing 12 o'clock. Recommend halt." The formation stopped at once, training snapping into instinct. Each man dropped into cover, weapons bristling toward the trees. Long seconds stretched like hours. "I don't see anything," Williams murmured. "Neither do I," Cooper added. "Could be an animal." "No," his voice stayed calm, measured. "Movement's deliberate, someone's there." Didn't argue, not yet. "Advance, check it out, rest of team hold." The scout moved carefully, spiraling outward, scanning the ground. 10 minutes passed. 15. Finally his voice crackled back. "Area clear, but sir, you should see this." The others gathered, stayed above, watching through her scope. On the ground below, knelt, studying what had found. His posture shifted, tightened. "Footprints, military boots, recent," reported. "And this," he held up a casing, brass, 7.62 by 51, NATO standard. Exactly what had warned about. Her voice cut in, low, steady. "Sir, that's bait or a warning. This is a prepared engagement area. Recommend immediate withdrawal." Silence on the channel. The SEALs waited. She could almost see the war inside, the instinct that whispered she was right, the pride that refused to yield, the memory of pressing like a ghost at his shoulder. Finally his voice came back, clipped. "Negative, Hawk, we continue the mission. Modified approach. Chart alternate route." Closed her eyes, biting back her frustration. "Copy, Viper 1." The team moved again, deeper into the valley, and every step pulled them into the jaws of something waiting. The ravine narrowed with each mile. Sheer rock walls pressed in close, funneling them forward, sometimes no wider than 2 men shoulder to shoulder. Overhead, the strip of sky thinned, the light dimming. Unease hardened into certainty. This was a choke point, textbook kill zone. Then she saw it. 20 feet up the east wall, stone dust still clinging fresh where climbing gear had bitten into rock. Recently disturbed, recently abandoned. Her breath caught. She keyed her radio. "Viper 1, Hawk. Evidence of observation post, east wall. Recently occupied, sir. This is wrong. This isn't a camp, it's a trap." The team halted. Even from her angle she saw stiffen. His voice came back, slower this time. "Could be climbers." "In a restricted training area," she countered softly. "Sir, every sign points to ambush. Intel's compromised. I strongly recommend withdrawal." For the first time doubt shadowed his tone. The silence stretched. Then finally, "All stations, Viper 1, pulling back. New rally point insertion LZ. Move out." Relief washed through her like air after drowning. He was listening. But it was already too late. The blast hit from behind. A roar that shook the earth, collapsing part of the ravine wall in a storm of stone and dust. Rocks tumbled, choking their only retreat. "Contact!" Williams shouted. Gunfire erupted, not sporadic, not wild, controlled bursts, interlocking arcs, snipers above, machine guns chewing into the rock, the unmistakable sound of professionals closing a trap. "Ambush!" His voice cut through chaos. "Find cover." The ravine was a storm of ricochets, bullets sparking off stone, shards slicing skin, dust so thick it stung eyes. Went down first, a cry tearing through comms. Henderson was already on him, voice tight. Multiple GSWs, lower extremities, applying pressure. Need ASAP. Wasn't coming. Abandoned her perch, sprinting along the ridge. Her training moved her faster than thought. She dropped prone, set her bipod, and breathed. Her first shot cut through the machine gunner's faceplate. Silence from the nest. Second shot. An enemy sniper, his eye meeting hers through glass for half a second before the bullet erased him. Third, an RPG carrier mid-stride, the warhead tumbling harmlessly down the slope as his body followed. Her calm, precise, rhythm-carved breathing room into the chaos. "Path open, move," she barked. Seized the chance, rallying the team toward a narrow side canyon. Henderson and Williams dragged. Cooper and Jackson laid, covering fire. The SEALs moved like they had trained for this their whole lives, because they had. Scope danced from target to target, stitching windows of survival into the storm. When the last man vanished into the canyon, she broke down her rifle, slid from her position, and followed. The side canyon was worse. A box 50 meters wide surrounded by 100-foot cliffs, one way in, one way out. They were trapped. His voice was steel. Williams, Cooper, entrance defense. Jackson, get comms. Doc, keep alive. Hawk, get eyes up top. Scrambled up a ledge, set her scope. Her stomach sank. The enemy wasn't rushing. They weren't storming. They were settling in, establishing firing positions on the rim, snipers covering exits, machine guns cross-laced. Containment. Not kill. They were being boxed. Why? The answer came an hour later. A single shot cracked, sparking stone inches from Williams's head. Warning. Then another, this one tearing into his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. The message was clear. We can kill you whenever we want. But they didn't, not yet. Night fell heavy. The canyon turned black, drifted in and out of consciousness, his face pale, sweat beading. Henderson worked with bloody hands, fighting a battle he was losing. "We've got maybe 2 days of water if rationed," Jackson reported quietly. "Ammo's solid. Doesn't matter if we can't get out." Stared at the map in his lap, the weight of command crushing his shoulders. Every choice he had made had led them here. His men bleeding, his comms dead, his instincts ignored. He pulled a small photograph from his pocket, the edges worn. Sarah's face smiled up at him, her eyes bright the way they had been before Iraq had hollowed her out, before she had put a gun to her temple 3 years ago. "I should have listened," he whispered. "You should have," a quiet voice said. Startled, turning, stood a few feet away, her face unreadable in the dim light. He tucked the photograph away quickly. "I didn't ask for commentary, Sergeant." "You didn't ask for truth either," she replied softly. "But you need it. Someone fed us false intel. Someone sent us here to die." His eyes hardened. Speculation. "No, observation." She stepped closer, voice low. "Their movement patterns. Unified command, not a cell, a force, professional, coordinated. Someone wanted us contained, not killed. Yet, that means purpose. That means time. They're waiting." "For what?" he asked, his voice a rasp. Her eyes locked onto his. "You already know." At dawn she climbed higher, setting her scope on the eastern ridge. The man she found there was no myth, no rumor. Wright, former Delta Force, disgraced, dishonorably discharged in 2007. And now, leading mercenaries on American soil. His gut turned cold. When she told, the color drained from his face. Right, he knew him. He had served with him, fought beside him, trusted him. And once, nearly 20 years ago, when intel had been too perfect and Wright's name had been whispered then, too. The pieces fell like stones in his chest. This wasn't just ambush. It was betrayal. A ghost from the past come back to finish what had started long ago. And for the first time realized, had been right all along. What happens when the cage doesn't close to kill you, but to keep you alive? The box canyon was quiet now, too quiet. Not the silence of wilderness, but the silence of a chessboard between moves. Lay prone on a narrow ledge 20 feet up the wall, her scope trained on the rim above. She saw them, enemy silhouettes shifting into place with cold precision, snipers establishing nests, machine gunners locking fields of fire, men with radios, their lips moving, passing orders she couldn't hear but could almost feel. They weren't coming down, not yet. Containment, control. She whispered into her mic. They're not attacking, sir. They're building a siege. Below's jaw flexed. He didn't look up at her, didn't need to. Confirmed. Confirmed. The men around him shifted, restless. Jackson fiddled with the comm set, static still hissing uselessly. Cooper and Williams adjusted their weapons, eyes on the entrance. Henderson bent over, hands slick with blood, fighting to keep the wounded scout's life from slipping through his fingers. "Why box us in instead of finishing us?" Cooper muttered. No one answered. Because the answer was worse than silence. It began with one shot. A sniper's round cracked off stone inches from Williams's head, showering him with fragments. A warning. Then a second round slammed into his shoulder, spinning him back, blood blossoming. His heart lurched, her scope searching for the shooter, but the muzzle flash was gone. Professional, clean. Williams groaned, clutching his shoulder. Henderson cursed under his breath, moving fast. Through and through, no artery, you'll live. But the message was written in blood. We control you. They could have ended Williams. Instead, they marked him, like predators reminding prey of the teeth above. Night pressed down like a weight. The men rationed sips of water. Ammunition was counted out like prayer beads. Drifted in and out of consciousness, his breath ragged, his skin pale, waxy. Henderson whispered to him, coaxing him to stay, but knew the truth written in the medic's tired eyes. Without surgery, was already halfway to the other side. Sat apart, a shadow against shadows. His hands rested on a folded map that had no answers. His head bowed, shoulders heavy. Saw the photograph again when he thought no one was watching. A woman's face, smiling, frozen in time. Sarah. She'd heard whispers before this mission. How Sarah, once CIA, had seen too much, warned too many times and been broken by it. A pistol. A quiet apartment. A commander left behind with nothing but regret. Now here he was again, ignoring warnings, leading men into a trap spun from false intel. Climbed down from her ledge and crossed the canyon. She stopped a few feet away, close enough for words, far enough for respect. "You should listened," she said softly. His eyes flicked up hard. "Excuse me." "You felt it in your gut. The intel was too neat. You knew it, and you walked us into it anyway." His face darkened. "Careful, Sergeant. Careful doesn't keep us alive. Truth does." She lowered her voice, glancing at the others. "Someone wanted this. Someone fed us bad intel and placed right here with a force ready to contain, not kill. That means purpose. They're waiting for something." His hands curled into fists. "Speculation." "Observation," she corrected. "Patterns don't lie. Command structures don't lie. They could ended us hours ago, but they didn't. They want us here. They're waiting for the right time." He stared at her, his jaw working. "And what do you propose we do about it?" Her answer was simple, cold. "Change the equation." When dawn broke, she had already chosen her position. From her ledge she had tracked right, watched him move between nests and map tables, commanding like he still wore a uniform. She had studied his timing, his patterns. Every 3 hours he paused at a table in a shallow alcove on the eastern ridge. For 3 seconds his torso was exposed through a V-shaped gap in the rock. 3 seconds. 920 meters. And no margin for error. She briefed at first light, her tone calm, clinical. That's the shot. Remove him, the force fractures. They'll lose cohesion. That's our only chance. Studied her expression, unreadable. You're talking about 1,000,000 to 1. I've made longer shots with worse odds. If you miss. I won't. Her eyes didn't waver. Silence stretched between them. Finally, he nodded. Prepare your position. You'll have your shot at first light. She inclined her head. I'll need a spotter. He surprised her then. I'll do it. Her brow rose. I was a sniper before I was a commander, he said quietly, and I want to see this shot myself. The hours before dawn crawled. Broke down her rifle piece by piece, cleaned it until it gleamed, reassembled it with methodical precision. Checked her optics, rechecked her ballistics. She calculated and recalculated the wind, the air density, the angle. She murmured the numbers under her breath until they became rhythm. On her stock, her fingers lingered on the scrap of faded cloth, Colonel Jackson's, her mentor. The one who had told her once, think like the bullet, feel the wind in your blood. She closed her eyes, felt the mountain breathing, the valley shifting, herself becoming not a soldier, not a woman, but the path the bullet would take. When she opened them again, was beside her. He said nothing at first, simply unfolded the spotting scope, adjusted the focus, matched his breathing to hers. The others below waited in silence, watching the sky pale. Henderson whispered over, coaxing life into a body that was already slipping. Williams clenched his jaw against pain, his bandaged shoulder stiff. Cooper checked magazines, his hands steady. Jackson fiddled with comms, still hopping. And above them all, the two sharpshooters waited. The light turned gray. Then blue. Movement on the ridge. Target moving, whispered, his eye to the scope. His pulse slowed, her breath settled. She adjusted her crosshairs to the V-shaped window. Wright stepped into the opening, head bent over the map. Target acquired. 3 seconds. She pressed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The sound thundered through the canyon. For one heartbeat, recoil blinded her. Then chaos. Figures rushed toward Wright's position, frantic. Their cohesion shattered, order dissolving into confusion. Target down, confirmed, all in his voice. Center mass, he's not getting up. For a moment they shared silence. Not relief, not triumph, just the solemn weight of impossible odds beaten by steel and resolve. Then's command voice roared back to life. All stations, Viper 1, execute, execute, execute. The canyon erupted. Williams and Cooper poured suppressive fire at the entrance. Henderson and Jackson hauled on an improvised stretcher. Shots from above carved gaps in the enemy's cordon, dropping machine gunners, scattering formations. The SEALs surged through the confusion, breaking the containment, clawing their way back into the ravine. Without Wright, the mercenaries lost discipline. They still fought, still bled men into the dust, but their interlocking fields collapsed into chaos. For the first time since the rocks fell, there was hope. Gathered her gear, slid down the canyon wall and joined them. Her rifle roared again and again, every shot precise, every enemy who raised his head struck down before he could fire. When they reached the tree line 2 kilometers out, the chase had dissolved into scattered skirmishes. Dangerous but survivable. They were alive. For now. They stopped to breathe on a ridge, lay pale and trembling, his pulse faint. Henderson shook his head, his voice tight. He's crashing, sir. Infection, blood loss. He won't last hours. His face was granite, but inside the cracks widened. He turned too. That shot. In 20 years, I've never seen anything like it. She met his gaze, her voice flat. Just doing my job, sir. No, he shook his head slowly. That wasn't a job. That was the difference between life and death for all of us, for me. She gave a slight nod. No pride, no smile, just acknowledgement. Then her eyes drifted too. Sir, there's something more. Wright wasn't just stalling us. He was waiting for something, containment, psychological pressure. This wasn't about the team. It was about whatever he's carrying, they wanted it. His eyes narrowed. Carrying what? Her silence said everything. And in that silence, the true scope of betrayal began to take shape. Why had whispered her name before he slipped under again? Crouched beside him, her hand firm against his clammy wrist, feeling the faint, stuttering beat of his pulse. His lips moved, cracked and dry. She leaned closer, straining to hear. Hawk. Then nothing, just the rattle of breath, his body slackening like sand draining from a fist. Henderson cursed under his breath, tightening the bandage around his abdomen. He's burning up. Septic. I need him, sir, or he's gone. No was coming. The comms were dead. Their maps useless. And every path forward felt like it was already lined with eyes, with rifles, with men waiting to finish what Wright had started. Wiped grit from her cheek, eyes on. He stood rigid, scanning the weight of command carved deep into his face. They weren't waiting on us, she said quietly. They were waiting on him. His gaze snapped to hers. She nodded. They could killed him 10 times over. They didn't. They boxed him in. They wanted him alive. Silence spread over the team like a slow frost. Williams was the first to break it, his voice rough. Why, he's our scout, not carrying intel. But knew better. She had seen the way guarded his pack, how he'd flinched when the ambush began, his hand going not for his weapon but for the pouch strapped tight to his chest. She looked at, Sir, there's something he hasn't told us. They moved before dawn, slipping from shadow to shadow. The mercenaries hunted them still, though without Wright the pursuit was fractured. Sporadic gunfire crackled behind them, sometimes too close, sometimes just distant enough to remind them they were prey. Was lashed to a stretcher of branches and rope, Henderson and Williams trading the burden as sweat poured down their faces. Every grunt, every stumble was a reminder of the weight of a man they might not be able to save. Walked rear guard, her rifle sweeping arcs through the trees. The mountain air stung her lungs. Her mind gnawed at the unanswered question. What is carrying? By noon they found cover in a ravine thick with pine. Henderson sank to his knees beside, checking the wound. His voice was grim. He's septic. I've done everything I can. If he doesn't get to a surgeon soon. He stopped himself, shaking his head. Crouched beside the scout, his tone quiet but edged with steel. Talk to me. What are they after? Stirred, his eyes glassy, lips trembling. His hand fumbled at the pouch on his chest. Leaned forward as he pulled free a small, dirt-stained object. A flash drive. His breath caught. His voice was faint, broken. Not terrorists, not training camp, it's Americans, contractors, black budget, they built this place. Testing, weapons, stateside. His head lolled. Henderson pressed fingers to his throat, searching. He's hanging on barely. Stared at the drive. Something about its weight in his trembling hand chilled her. Not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. Proof. Names. Accounts. A rot so deep it had eaten its way back home. His jaw clenched. They want to erase it, erase him. Met his eyes. No, they want to erase all of you. Wright wasn't just tying up loose ends. He was making sure the story dies here in this canyon. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Each man looking at the drive, then at the ridges beyond. Finally stood, voice rough. Then we make sure it doesn't die, we get this out. The hours blurred into sweat and exhaustion. They carried like he was already a ghost, the stretcher dragging, men stumbling. Every sound was the crack of a branch, the whisper of wind, the faint, distant thrum of rotor blades. At first they thought it was imagination, too faint, too high. Then it grew, deepened, a helicopter. The men froze, hearts pounding, eyes lifting to the strip of sky above the treetops. Black, not military green, not medevac white, matte, unmarked. The helicopter circled once, then again, like a vulture deciding if the body was dead enough to claim. Jackson muttered, "That's not rescue." "No," agreed, "that's cleanup." The bird angled lower, doors slid open, figures inside, rifles ready. His voice snapped, "Cover, get under cover." The ravine exploded in noise. Gunfire lanced from the helo, chewing earth and stone. Trees splintered, branches falling like rain. Dropped to a knee, bracing her rifle, leading her target through the chaos. Her breath slowed, narrowed. She squeezed. One of the door gunners slumped, his weapon falling silent. The bird wobbled, rose higher, circling away, but it wasn't retreat. It was repositioning. "We've got minutes, maybe less," she said. They ran, scrambling uphill, dragging lungs on fire. Bullets snapped through the trees, branches whipping their faces. Covered their flank, her rifle cracking, dropping shadows that emerged from the tree line. Professionals again, black-clad, moving with precision. Not terrorists, not amateurs, men trained like them against them. Barked orders, his voice ragged but sharp. "Williams left flank, Cooper right, keep moving." The team surged upward, every muscle screaming, dragging their wounded brother toward the thin ridge above. Scope caught the helicopter angling in, nose dipping, preparing for another run. Her heart slammed. She had seconds. She dropped prone, centered the cockpit glass in her crosshairs. Too far, too fast. She steadied anyway, exhaled. Fired. The round punched the cockpit, webbing glass. The bird lurched, rotor whining. Not a kill, but enough. It banked away, wobbling into the distance, black smoke trailing faint behind it. The forest fell silent again. For now. They collapsed on the ridge, chests heaving. Henderson hovered over, his voice hoarse. "We're out of time, he needs or he's gone." Scanned the horizon. Her voice was steady, though her chest ached. "That hello wasn't extraction, it was proof. Someone high wanted us erased. That means they'll keep coming." Wiped blood from his cheek, eyes burning. "Then we outrun them, we get this drive out. If it kills us, it kills us. But it doesn't die here." The men looked at him, weary, broken, but still standing. His gaze lingered on. His lips moved again, barely audible. She leaned closer. "Hawk, don't trust." Then his breath caught, shallow, ragged. Henderson pressed fingers to his throat, shaking his head slowly. Felt it like a stone in her chest. Another brother gone, another weight they'd carry forever. She closed eyes, her hand lingering a moment longer than needed. "Rest easy," she whispered. Then she stood, her rifle heavy in her hands, her heart heavier still. And she wondered, not for the first time, if survival was a gift or a curse. How many times can a team break before it's no longer a team? The ridge was too quiet after his death. The forest swayed gently in the breeze, but for the men huddled there, silence pressed heavier than any ambush. Crouched beside her rifle, eyes scanning the horizon, but her thoughts kept circling back to the weight of his last words. "Don't trust." Trust who? Her gaze flicked too. He stood apart, his broad shoulders bowed against the setting sun, his face unreadable but his silence louder than any command. The men looked to him still, even after every wrong call, every dead end. That was the power of command, it clung even when broken. But felt it, the fracture running down the middle of them, widening with each step forward. Williams leaned against a pine, his bandaged shoulder stiff, his face drawn. "We can't keep this up, sir. Is gone. Henderson's shot. I'm half useless. We're bleeding out one man at a time." Henderson, hands still stained with blood, didn't look up. He's right. Without medevac, it's only a matter of time. Cooper spat into the dirt. And for what? A damn flash drive. Some black-budget nightmare command doesn't even want us carrying. Jackson fiddled with the dead comms unit, static hissing in his ear. If they jammed us once, they'll jam us again. Even if we get near in channel, who's to say it won't be them that picks us up? The air grew heavy. Words unsaid crowded the space. Finally broke it. You saw the helicopter. You saw the men hunting us. This isn't about finishing a mission anymore. It's about survival, about making sure the truth gets out even if we don't. Cooper's laugh was bitter. Truth doesn't save us from bullets. No, she admitted. Her voice stayed steady. But it's the only thing worth dying for. Silence again. Silence most of all. Night came cold. They huddled around a smokeless fire, rationing sips of water, dividing the last of their rations. Sat apart, cleaning her rifle in the dim glow. Her hands moved by memory. Her mind replayed last breath, the way his eyes had begged her to understand something he hadn't said. Don't trust. Who? She studied the men in the firelight. Williams, grim but loyal. Henderson, broken by another brother he couldn't save. Cooper, anger boiling under his skin. Jackson, fidgeting with his useless radio as though hope could be tuned like a frequency. Then her gaze lingered on the commander who had ignored her warnings, the man who carried guilt in his eyes when no one else was looking. What if's words had been about him? The thought burned like acid, but she couldn't dismiss it. At dawn, they moved again. The forest thinned as they climbed higher, toward a ridge line knew would give them line of sight to the highway. Beyond that, maybe, a chance. But the higher they climbed, the heavier the air felt. She could feel the noose tightening. Halfway up she froze, a snapped branch, a flash of movement, too fast to be animal, too disciplined to be random. Contact, she hissed into her mic. The first shots rang out before the word left her lips. Bullets cracked through branches, showering them with splinters. Ambush, Williams roared, diving for cover. They returned fire, the forest erupting in thunder. Figures in black emerged from the trees, moving in coordinated sweeps. Not ragtag fighters, operators, Americans. Dropped prone, her rifle kicking again and again, carving space in the storm. Henderson dragged Jackson behind a log, bullets chewing bark inches from their heads. His voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. Flank right, push them off the slope. They obeyed, because that's what soldiers do, even when their trust is cracking. Minutes stretched like hours. The forest was a furnace of gunfire and smoke. Men screamed, bled, fell. Crawled forward, sighting a squad leader rallying his men. Her shot split him open, the line faltering. But for everyone she dropped, two more pressed in. This wasn't suppression, it wasn't harassment. It was tightening, hurting. Toward where? She scanned the tree line and saw it, shapes moving above them, cutting off the ridge. They're boxing us again, she shouted. Swore into the radio. Williams cover left, Cooper fragged the ridge. Cooper's grenade arced true, exploding in a roar, buying them seconds. Enough to break contact, scrambling upward toward a rock outcrop. Covered their retreat, her rifle screaming defiance until her magazine clicked empty. She slammed in another, breath ragged. They made it barely. But they had been pushed again, always pushed. When the gunfire finally died, they crouched in the shelter of the outcrop, chests heaving. Henderson checked Jackson's leg, grazed but bleeding badly. Williams slumped, pale, his shoulder wound, reopening. And stood scanning the valley below. His face was ash. They're not trying to kill us, said softly. Not all at once. His jaw clenched, he didn't answer. But she pressed on, her voice steady. They're moving us, herding us toward a point, toward something waiting. Williams looked up, sweat dripping down his temple. Sir, she's right, this isn't random, they're steering us. Finally turned, his eyes hard. "And what do you propose, Sergeant, that we sit here and wait to die?" "No," she said. Her voice was calm, but the fire in her chest was sharp. "I propose we stop playing their game." The team fell silent. Her words hung in the air like a spark. "What are you saying?" Cooper asked. His eyes locked on. "We don't run anymore. We choose the ground. We set the trap. We force them to react to us." Williams shook his head weakly. "With what? We're down a man, low on ammo, running on fumes." Her voice didn't waver. "With what we have, with who we are, they think they're hunting prey. We remind them what predators we can be." The men looked at one another, weary, broken, but somewhere in their eyes a flicker of the old fire returned. His jaw tightened. He studied her for a long time, then slowly he nodded. "All right, Sergeant, your plan, your lead." The shift was almost imperceptible, but she felt it, the authority of command tilting. The men watching her now, not him. For the first time, wasn't just the outsider sniper. She was the axis on which their survival turned. And knew it. They spent the night preparing. Claymores set in choke points, fields of fire mapped in whispers, dead branches piled for cover, every man contributing what he could, though their bodies were battered. Moved like a machine, her instincts shaping the battlefield. She positioned herself high, covering arcs where the enemy would funnel. But when the work was done and the men rested in silence, her mind wouldn't quiet. His whisper haunted her still, "Don't trust." She turned the words over like a blade in her hands. Not the enemy, that was obvious. Not the mission, that was already burned. Then who? Her eyes drifted too. He sat apart, staring into the dark, the photograph of Sarah in his hand, a man consumed by ghosts. Was it him? If had known something, if the flash drive had revealed more than just black ops and contractors, what if's name was buried in it? The thought chilled her, and yet she couldn't ignore it. Dawn cracked like glass. The forest below stirred with movement, dark shapes advancing, dozens of them professional, silent. Steadied her rifle, her finger brushing the trigger, her breath slow, her mind calm. The trap was set. But in her chest, the question still burned. If's last warning had been true, if trust itself was a lie. Then when the shooting started, who would stand at her side? And who would put a knife in her back? How long can you hold a line when you already know it's broken? The forest was gray with dawn when the first shadows appeared, sliding through the mist like wraiths. Lay prone, her cheek pressed against cold metal, her crosshairs tracking movement on the tree line. They came silent, professional, dark-clad operators advancing in staggered intervals, rifles sweeping, eyes sharp. Not wild fighters, not fanatics, soldiers trained as well as any she'd fought beside. His voice cut through comms, calm and sharp. "Hold, wait for my mark." Below her, the men crouched behind their makeshift barricades, logs, branches, hastily piled earth, claymores wired, grenades ready. Henderson kneeling over Jackson's leg wound, whispering a prayer under his breath. Williams pale but steady, rifle cradled to his good shoulder. Cooper checking detonators with twitching fingers. And crouched low, his rifle across his knees, watching, waiting, his eyes unreadable. The enemy kept advancing, 50 meters, 40, 30. Now whispered. Claymores ripped the silence apart. A thunderclap rolled through the trees, branches shredded, men torn from their feet. Shouts rose, frantic. Gunfire erupted in reply, bullets slamming into bark, dirt, stone. His rifle cracked once, twice, 3 times. Each shot clean, each man who raised his head dropped before his finger could pull the trigger. The battle was chaos, controlled, brutal chaos. Cooper hurled grenades down the slope, explosions rocking the line. Henderson dragged Jackson deeper into cover, his hands never still, torn between his weapon and his patient. Williams gritted his teeth against pain, firing with his one good arm. The mercenaries pressed harder, their numbers bleeding but unbroken. They moved with purpose, flanking, testing, probing. Shifted her aim, dropping a squad leader signaling with his hand. The enemy faltered, regrouped. She bought seconds, but seconds were all they ever had. Below's voice cut through, sharp, commanding. Left flank collapsing. Williams, Cooper, hold the line. Williams barked back, ragged. I'm down to my last mag. Make it count, roared. His eyes narrowed behind her scope. His voice was fire again, his authority clawing its way back. But she saw more than his words. She saw the hesitation in his movements, the way his gaze kept flicking, not to the enemy but to her. As though he was waiting. The firefight raged for an hour that felt like a lifetime. Every shot, every shout, every explosion carved years into their bones. By the time silence finally fell, the ground below was littered with bodies. Black-clad forms sprawled across torn earth and splintered trees. Smoke hung heavy in the air. But victory was not what it felt like. Jackson's leg bled again, Henderson's face gray with exhaustion. Williams slumped against the barricade, eyes half closed. Cooper's hands shook as he reloaded, lips tight with rage. Its rifle barrel smoked, her chest heaving, her eyes scanning for the next wave she knew would come. Because it always came. When the quiet stretched too long, suspicion filled its place. They'll regroup, Cooper muttered. They're waiting for reinforcements. Or waiting for us to move, Williams added bitterly. His voice was low, steady. They've got more, this was just pressure testing our defense. They'll come again stronger. No one argued, they knew she was right. Stood slowly, his face unreadable. He scanned the field, the dead, the tree line. Then he turned to her. You said they were steering us, toward what? Her jaw tightened. I don't know, but whatever it is, they're willing to bleed for it. Studied her for a long moment. Then softly, and what aren't you telling us? The words hit like a shot. The men looked up, startled. His brow furrowed. Excuse me. You heard me, his voice sharpened. From the start, you've known more than you should. You called the ambush before it happened. You knew Wright's face. You knew the trap. And now you lead us like you've been here before. Silence crackled. Williams shifted, uneasy. Cooper's hand lingered near his weapon. His heart slammed, but her voice stayed calm. I knew Wright from his file, from stories that floated through units, and I saw the signs because I've lived them before. Afghanistan, Iraq. Intel too clean, traps too neat. You ignored it, sir, I didn't. Stepped closer, his eyes burning. Or maybe you're part of it. Maybe wasn't warning us about me. The words cut deeper than bullets. For a moment the forest wasn't full of enemies. It was full of something worse. Doubt. Henderson looked up from Jackson, his eyes wide. Sir, that's... Enough, snapped, her voice sharp. You want to blame me for your ghosts, for Sarah, for every order you second-guessed. Fine. But don't pretend you didn't hear his last words. Don't twist them because you can't stand the truth. The men froze. The name hung in the air like a blade. His face twisted, rage, pain, shame. His voice dropped, a growl. You don't speak her name. Held his gaze, her voice softened. She warned you, didn't she? About intel that smelled the same as this. And you ignored her, just like you ignored me. For the first time, his mask cracked. And in that crack, saw the man behind the commander. A man who had carried guilt so long it had carved him hollow. The silence broke when Cooper barked. Enough! We're tearing ourselves apart while they reload for the next round. The men turned away, tension lingering like smoke. But the fracture remained. Night fell heavy. They set a rotating watch, but sleep was a ghost no one could catch. Sat on her ledge, her rifle across her knees, her eyes on the stars. Her mind replayed the day's words, the accusation still ringing in her ears. Don't trust. If it meant, why give her the warning and not the others? Unless it wasn't about command at all. Unless it was about something else, something in the drive. Her chest tightened, the drive. had handed it to, and had never shown it to any of them. At dawn, the next assault came. Louder, heavier, grenades rolling through trees, mortars arcing in from unseen positions. The ground shook, dirt flying. The men scrambled, firing blind, coughing through smoke. Dropped targets where she could, but there were too many too close. Williams went down hard, blood spraying from his thigh. Henderson screamed for cover as he dragged him back. Cooper roared, his rifle blazing, emptying mag after mag into the tree line. And through it all, fired with methodical precision, but his hand never strayed far from the pouch inside his vest. Stomach turned cold, the flash drive still hidden, still secret. The battle dragged until their ammo thinned to scraps, every shot measured, every movement desperate. When silence finally returned, the forest was cratered, black with smoke, their barricades shredded, their numbers dwindling. Jackson was unconscious. Henderson's hands shook as he pressed bandages to Williams's leg. Cooper sat slumped, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. And standing over them all, felt the weight of realization pressing down like stone. The traitor wasn't outside. It was here. She turned her gaze on, her voice low, steady, lethal. Show me the drive. What truth is worse than death? The one you've carried in silence, praying no one would ever ask to see. The dawn light was gray, whence words broke the air like a gunshot. Show me the drive. The men froze. Cooper's eyes snapped up, fury and exhaustion carved deep into his face. Henderson paused, his bloody hand still pressed against Williams's thigh. Jackson stirred weakly on the ground, half conscious, and stood rigid, the pouch inside his vest heavy against his chest. His jaw clenched. Sergeant. No, she cut him off, voice calm but sharp. No more secrets. Died for that drive. We've bled for it. Men are lying here half dead for it. And you're holding it like it belongs to you. It doesn't. It belongs to the truth. His eyes burned into hers, rage and shame twisting in equal measure. You don't know what's on it. Then show me. The silence stretched, a silence thicker than the smoke still rising from the battlefield around them. Finally pulled it free, a small dirt-smeared flash drive. He turned it in his fingers like it was a live round. Then, slowly, he crouched beside Jackson's comm unit, jury-rigged with batteries scavenged from their optics. He slid the drive into the port. The screen flickered, static, then text. Files, folders, names. Leaned closer, her breath catching. Phoenix Directive. Her eyes skimmed the screen. Reports of weapons testing, chemical dispersal trials in remote deserts, live fire on controlled villages overseas, contractors paid in silence, politicians paid in favors, and one file with coordinates that matched the Sierra Nevada, the very valley they stood bleeding in. Her stomach turned cold. This wasn't just training. This was proof of sanctioned crimes on American soil. She whispered, "My God." Cooper's fist slammed the dirt. They built this place, our own people, and they sent us in to bury it. Henderson's voice shook. He knew, that's why they hunted him. His eyes stayed on, and you knew too, didn't you? His silence was answer enough. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, tired. I didn't know everything, but I knew enough. Sarah tried to tell me years ago. She said black projects were bleeding into the soil. She said one day they'd turn their guns inward. I didn't believe her. I called it paranoia. His face twisted, and then she put a bullet in her head because she carried it alone. Felt the ache of his words in her chest, the weight of guilt that bent his shoulders. And now, he said quietly, I carry it. She studied him, her voice a whisper. And in carrying it, you've led us into the same trap. He didn't deny it. The men stared at the screen, the weight of revelation heavier than any wound. Williams broke the silence, his voice ragged. So what now? Even if we get this out, you think anyone's gonna believe us? They'll bury it deeper. They'll bury us with it. Cooper spat. Then we don't give them the chance. We make it loud. We make it undeniable. Henderson shook his head. We don't even know if we'll make it another mile. Stood, her rifle in hand, her voice steady. Then we fight for every mile, not for ourselves, not even for the people who'll never know this was happening unless we carry it out. Her eyes swept the men, one by one. Sometimes survival isn't about living. It's about making sure the truth does. The decision was silent but unanimous. They packed what little they had left, ammunition counted by single rounds, water sipped from cracked canteens. Henderson rigged bandages from scraps of shirts. Jackson was carried on a litter made of branches. And for all his guilt, slipped the drive back into his vest. Not out of secrecy now, but out of necessity. If one of them fell, someone had to keep carrying it. They moved before noon, shadows among trees. Every step was agony. Every sound behind them a reminder that hunters still waited. Walked point, eyes sharp, instincts sharper. And though her rifle never wavered, the thought gnawed at her. His last words, don't trust. Had they been about after all, or someone else entirely? The answer came 2 hours later. A shot cracked from behind. Henderson staggered, dropping Jackson's litter. Blood sprayed from his back. Spun, rifle up, only to see Cooper standing over him, pistol smoking. The world froze. Cooper's eyes were wild, his chest heaving. I told you, this is suicide. You think they'll let us walk out with this? They'll slaughter us before we're in sight of civilization. That drive doesn't save us. It kills us. Henderson gasped, blood pooling beneath him, his eyes wide with shock, betrayal. His voice was ice. You did this. Cooper's gun snapped toward her. I did what had to be done. I'm not dying for a lie. Williams groaned from his place against a tree, his voice hoarse. You son of a... Shut up, Cooper barked. His gun swept between them. I've seen enough missions buried by command. I know how this ends. You think they'll let you parade this into daylight. They'll erase you before you breathe a word. The only way out is to ditch the drive, ditch the dead weight, and walk away. His heart pounded, but her voice stayed calm, even. That's why warned us. It was you. Cooper's eyes flicked, just for a second, enough. Her rifle cracked. The round hit center mass. Cooper staggered, his pistol falling from his hand, blood blooming across his chest. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide with rage and disbelief. You fools, he gasped. You think truth ever wins. Then he toppled into the dirt. Silence heavy, suffocating. Henderson lay still, his eyes glassy, his chest unmoving. Stomach twisted as she knelt beside him, pressing fingers to his neck. Nothing. Two gone now, and Henderson. She closed his eyes gently, her throat tight. Rest easy. Williams looked at her, pain and fury etched into his face. We keep losing pieces of ourselves. And for what? Her voice cracked just slightly. For the only thing left worth losing for. Crouched, retrieving the drive from Cooper's vest. His face was carved from stone, but his hands shook as he slipped it back into his own. They'll keep coming, he said flatly. But now they'll come harder. Cooper was right about one thing, they can't let this see daylight. His eyes burned. Then we make them try. We don't stop until the truth is bigger than the silence. The men nodded. Even Williams, his face pale, his shoulder bandaged, gave a grim nod. 3 left standing, 1 unconscious. A shattered team. But still a team. That night they didn't sleep. They dug in on the ridge, staring into the dark, waiting for the next wave. Sat apart, her rifle across her knees, her eyes on the horizon. Her mind burned with ghosts. Henderson, even Cooper, his betrayal still echoing in her ears. She whispered into the night, not for anyone to hear. Sometimes the fight isn't about winning. It's about making sure they can't forget we fought. And in her chest she felt it, the weight of sacrifice. Heavy, crushing, but not hopeless. never hopeless, because morning was coming, and with it their last stand. What do you hold on to when everything else is gone? The ridge was cold at dawn. Frost clung to the pine needles, mist curling through the valley below. Lay prone at the highest point, her scope sweeping the tree line. 3 of them left, 4 if you counted Jackson, unconscious and pale on the stretcher. Williams leaned against a boulder, his shoulder bound, his leg bleeding through the cloth Henderson had left behind. His rifle rested across his knees, but his eyes were hollow. Crouched nearby, the flash drive heavy in his vest. He hadn't spoken much since Henderson's death. His silence was not command now. It was confession, penance, burden. And was the one they watched when their eyes lifted. Not anymore. The hunters would come, everyone knew it. The only question was when. The answer arrived at sunrise. The first mortar struck the ridge with a scream, earth and stone exploding in a fountain of dirt. The second landed closer, shaking the ground beneath them. Down, roared, dragging Jackson's stretcher deeper into cover. Gunfire erupted from below, dozens of rifles cracking in unison. Dark shapes swarmed through the mist, advancing with the relentless precision of men who knew they had numbers on their side. Exhaled slowly. Her rifle barked once, twice, 3 times. Men fell, the advance faltered. But more came, always more. Push them back, shouted firing bursts, his voice raw. Williams gritted his teeth, bracing his rifle against his good shoulder, squeezing off round after round. His face twisted in pain, but his fire was steady, defiant. The ridge became a storm. Bullets whined, stone shattered, smoke choked the air. And still they held. Minutes blurred into an hour, the air thick with gunpowder, the ground littered with bodies. Reloaded with calm precision, her breath steady, her eyes sharp. Every shot was a heartbeat, every heartbeat a promise. But she felt it, the weight pressing heavier with each passing minute, the inevitability. William slumped against the boulder, his rifle slipping from his hand. Blood soaked his thigh, his bandages dark and heavy. He looked at her, his eyes tired but unbroken. "You keep going," he whispered. "No matter what happens to me, you keep that truth alive." His throat tightened. She wanted to tell him he'd make it, that they all would, but lies had no place left here. So she only nodded. "Always." He gave a faint smile, then closed his eyes. His chest rose once, twice. Then stilled. Swallowed hard, forcing her gaze back to the scope. No time to grieve. Now only 2 of them, 2 to hold against an army. The enemy pressed harder. Mortars tore the ridge apart. Trees splintered, rocks shattered. Gunfire raked every shadow. Dropped target after target, her rifle an extension of her soul. Fired beside her, his face grim, his movements measured. But she saw it in his eyes, the acceptance. This was their last ground. Their last breath. Their last stand. In a lull between barrages, his voice cut through, hoarse and quiet. "When this ends, it has to be you." She didn't look at him. "What?" "You're the one who saw it from the start. You're the one who warned us. You're the one who carried us this far. You're the one who deserves to carry it out." Her jaw tightened. "We both carry it." He shook his head. "No, my name's already written in the shadows. If I make it out, they bury this deeper. If you make it out, maybe it sees daylight." She turned, meeting his eyes. And for the first time she didn't see a commander. She saw a man, broken, haunted, still standing anyway. Her voice was soft. "You're not as expendable as you think." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Neither are you." Then the next wave hit, and there was no more time for words. They fought like men and women who had nothing left to lose. The ridge shook with fire. The air screamed with bullets. His rifle cracked, her body moving on instinct, on muscle, on something deeper than either. His voice roared commands, but his hands were steady. his eyes locked on the enemy as though every shot was penance, every kill a confession. The line wavered, held, wavered again. Then a mortar slammed the ridge, was thrown hard against stone, her ears ringing, her vision spinning. When it cleared, she saw, pinned beneath rock, blood pooling from his chest. She crawled to him, her hands desperate. "No, no, stay with me." He coughed, blood on his lips. His eyes found hers, clear, steady. "Take it," he rasped. His hand pressed the drive into hers, his grip trembling. "Promise me." Her throat closed. "I can't leave you." "You already have to." His hand tightened once, then fell still. His eyes stared at the sky, empty. His chest cracked open. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to let the weight of it bury her. But the flash drive burned in her palm like fire. And she knew. There was no more choice. The enemy climbed the ridge, dark shapes closing in, shouts echoing. Slung her rifle, grabbed Jackson's stretcher with one arm, the drive clutched in the other. She dragged him through smoke, through fire, through blood. Bullets snapped past her, dirt exploded around her. The air was a storm. But she kept moving. Step by step, breath by breath. Every inch a battle, every inch a victory. She didn't know if she'd make it. But she knew she had to try. Hours later, when the world was quiet again, when the smoke thinned and the valley lay broken, no one could say how she made it out. Some swore they saw a figure moving through the mist, dragging another man, rifle in her hand, eyes sharp as fire. Others said it was just a story, born of desperation. But somewhere far from the ridge, a drive changed hands, a truth too heavy to bury. And somewhere in the quiet of memory, men who had died on that ridge lived on. In the end, it wasn't medals or ranks or headlines that mattered. It was this, that in the face of silence, one voice refused to vanish. That in the face of betrayal, one soldier chose truth over survival. And that sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.